We're here to share with you Paramhansa Yogananda's teachings as we learn through Swami Kriyananda. Yogananda is the author of Autobiography of a Yogi, this book, which if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's kind of the basic textbook of moving out of traditional ways of thinking. Anyone who moves sort of out a little bit of the narrow channels of the way Westerners have defined spirituality, become interested in India, become interested in a more inward understanding or greater desire to understand the teachings of Jesus from a perspective that isn't just the institutional way it's been defined. All of that interest and capability has been catalyzed to a very large extent on the entire globe by this book. It's really the oddest thing, but this is how great movements and revolutions happen. Some powerful figure, and in this case a God-realized inspired master, which is about as high a resume as you can have, you know, is called to this world with a real mission. A spiritual figure such as Yogananda does not come for small reasons. They come because it's a transition point on the whole planet. Those are the names that we remember: Krishna, Buddha, Christ, even earlier, Lord Rama. On the Indian side, you have more names than that. More recently, Paramhansa Ramakrishna and Yogananda. And all of them, their significance is that their appearance on the planet, divinely guided, is signaling that something really new is going to start. But these things take a very long time. Because they plant the flag of the future. So by definition, they're out of tune with the times. And it just takes a while for that energy, in a very mysterious, almost magical way. Metaphysical magic is what it is. It's perfectly understandable, but from a normal human consciousness, it seems almost magic that the energy gets planted. Planted is actually the right word. I have a small apple tree outside my house. Every time I think of it, I feel a little guilty because it's not as well taken care of as it should be. But I have a small apple tree, therefore, outside, and I can pick the apples and cut open the apple and then see the tiny apple seed. And at the same time I can see the apple seed, I can see the tree outside the kitchen window there. And it's so amazing to me that the seed is so small, but it has the inherent potential to become a tree. And from a physical perspective, you can't understand how something so tiny could hold so much, and that could then be the cause of multiple apples. All of the things that can happen physically, it doesn't make any sense, but the power is right there, and it's a perfect analogy, of course, both for our potential and for the potential of how great changes sweep across our planet. When Jesus was crucified, almost everybody who was there at the time, basically thought, well, that's the end of him. And any figures that we really know from that period of time are because of their association with him. Everyone else has just become insignificant. But he was smaller than an apple seed. Mustard seed, maybe, is the word used when you talk about Jesus, but he was smaller than an apple seed. I mean, he was a speck of dust compared to what was going on around him. But the power that spirituality has is completely different than the power of society. And that's one of the things I really want to talk with you about today. Our title is "The World Needs Your Higher Self." And we're caught in a time where there's a great deal of power moving in one direction, and there's also a great deal of power moving in another direction. One is moving toward chaos and disharmony, and one is moving toward the light. And those of us who are moving toward the light, look about like an apple seed compared to what's going on. But the potential is very great here. The fact the potential is divinely inspired and will not be stopped. But those of us who feel drawn this way, we have to pay attention. This is a very serious moment, both for us as individuals in our karma and for the world that we live in. In 1920, Yogananda was 27 years old, and he came from his home in Calcutta to, actually from his guru's ashram in Puri, and then came to America. He had a vision of Americans, and his guru had told him that his work would be in the West. In Autobiography of a Yogi, he tells the story as if it was all a surprise to him, but it's a little bit of an artist's technique to make it more interesting for us. But he had a vision of many faces, and he recognized them as Americans, and he felt he was being called to America. He, at that time, had started a school for a boys' school to provide education that was more in alignment with higher truths and less about making money. But his work was really in the West, and he was the first Indian of that stature, the spiritual stature, to make his life work in the West. He wasn't the first Indian ever to come to the West. Vivekananda came before him, Swami Ramatirtha. But he was the one, once he arrived in 1920, he only went back to his homeland once for a little over a year in 1935. And then from 1920 to 1952, he was in America, and for many of those years, he was crisscrossing the country by train and by automobile, speaking in all the major cities. And at that time, anyone from India, of course, England was much more involved with that culture than the USA was, but it was very, very unusual for an Indian of any type to be in the country, what to speak of a long-haired yogi who was sharing what were really unusual teachings for that time. And he was also just an extraordinary human being. He was, first of all, he was young. He had the dynamism of youth. He didn't have the sage nature of an elder. Rather, he was just a young man. And literally, he would run out onto the stage and he would shout to the audience, "How feels everyone?" And he would lead them in saying, "Awake and ready." And then he would ask again, "How is everyone?" And he would make them say, "Awake and ready." And ready for what? But there he was. And then he would just talk to them about, he talked in very practical terms, how yoga can make you rich, how yoga can give you great art, how yoga can give you a fine relationship, and how yoga can give you God, which was really the point of it. He wasn't talking hatha yoga postures, which is what yoga has come to mean. He was talking yoga as the unification, the union, which is what the word means, of all aspects of ourselves into one coordinated, uplifted flow of energy. And it was a message that the world was getting ready to hear. He was also the messenger of the dissolution of false boundaries among peoples, among East and West. Rudyard Kipling's East and West is never the twain shall meet. And Yogananda said to that, "Ha, of course they will." Because he was representing, East and West is only one part of it. What he was really representing is the fact that it's time for us to dissolve these artificial barriers. And he was anticipating what has come in the last so many decades, which is just so many of the barriers of space, of culture, of religion, of race, of language. All of these things are just beginning to dissolve. I was trying to think how to communicate my confidence in what's going on right now in the world. All of us, of course, this is extremely dramatic in the USA. I barely know politics in the country that I live in, but I get the hint that it's global, what's going on. We have a government now that has decided that 250 years of the government we had needs to be corrected as quickly as possible. So basically, they're just reinventing the entire American system of government, which the checks and balances that the Constitution founders, writers thought were so effective were based on the concept that we were all gentlemen and that we're all just fundamentally going to play by the rules. And very, very brilliant, very determined people in my country have realized that if you don't play by the rules, the enforcement process is rather arcane and very difficult to carry out. It's all based on everybody just wanting to cooperate. And so they figured out that if you just have enough power and don't want to cooperate, guess what? It's very hard to stop you. So that is a symbol that I'm living with, and I think to a certain extent from just reading a few headlines, that's what's happening here. We see ever increasing signs of what I cheerfully call collapsing civilization, which is just everything that we've depended on for so long. You know, marriage, education, all sorts of things. In my world, which is so entertaining, the Silicon Valley world where all of this, so much of this technology comes from, it's globalizing now. In California, it's gotten so expensive, people are moving, taking their companies, dusting the high taxes of California off their shoes and going to other places. But the advent of AI is now, it used to be that the dissolution of jobs didn't happen to the highly educated elite. But now AI is beginning to eat those realities too. I love what someone wrote. They said, I don't want AI to do art and music. I want AI to do the laundry and clean my house so that I can do art and music. But no one's quite figured that one out. But that's really what we want. But the end point of all of this is times are changing and they're not going to stop. It's either by deliberate forces of individuals who see the possibility for power, it's the inevitable technology that's coming up, and it is this ever-increasing freedom with an ever-increasing flow of energy that we just haven't figured out how to negotiate yet. And that's because, and this is also Yogananda writing an autobiography of a yogi, his guru writing in his book called The Holy Science. I throw these out in case you're interested in following through. That we are also going through on that a planet has karma. When the drama, the real drama of creation is individual. You know, the great changers are always individuals. The great science of yoga, it's always individual. The ancient science of yoga is not about institutional religion at all. It's about individual, personal experience. And this is not a question of somebody's opinion. If you think about it, all we ever experience is our own internal reality. And the planet has karma. And the planet is a living thing. The planet is the scene of a lot of dramas that play out. But the real progress or lack of progress is always individual. It's always our own consciousness. That's all we ever experience. And if we put into the conversation, which we have to put into the conversation, that we existed before we took this body and we will exist after we leave this body. This is not radical nowadays. All you have to do is type into Google near-death experiences and you can spend the next 5 years just listening to people who have stepped out of this world and tell us what it looks like. And wow, what they're saying is exactly what all the masters have been saying all along. So that this evolution of personal consciousness goes on for many incarnations. And so we're not really earthlings. It's just that when we were in the space between our births and the karma within us, which is what the chakra system is, the chakras is a wonderful, long, marvelous study. And if you have any interest, you can find out many ways. You can also go to my YouTube channel. I know about my YouTube channel. The YouTube, okay? And just type into the question box chakras. I highly encourage you to do it because the inner energy system is how our consciousness is carried from one incarnation to the other. Just as we step in and out of our clothes, but remain ourselves, we step in and out of our bodies, but remain ourselves. But we wear our bodies for so long, and they're so entertainingly changing as they go, that we forget that I'm just wearing it. But in that time in between, with the help of our guardian angels and a master, whoever we are attuned to, maybe your grandmother, whoever is there with you in that reality, you feel the magnetic pull that it's time for you to put on another body and have another experience. And you survey the field. I don't think it's quite as left brain as I'm describing it to you here, but nonetheless, that's the effect of it. You survey the field, and Yogananda was asked by Kriyananda, do we always come back to Earth? And Yogananda laughed when he asked that question. Oh, no, he said. There are countless inhabited planets that we can go to. And all of them are an environment in which a planetary drama is also being acted out. And the way Yogananda describes this is, and this is also modern science is coming to the same, our solar system has a dual which holds it into an elliptical orbit. And I'm summarizing this. This is also fascinating. This is there's a book called The Yugas, Yugas, which is a wonderful book written by friends of mine, but that's incidental. It happens to be a wonderful book, and it's about these long cycles. And so our solar system moves closer and then farther away from the center of our galaxy, which is an enormous source of energy. So the closer our planet is to that center, the more enlightened, the more that those who inhabit this planet are capable of understanding more subtle realities. The farther away we are, the more the base level of civilization is less capable of understanding subtle realities. And we go through in the whole cycle like this is 24,000 years. So it's much too long for us to be able to keep it in our human memory. And so for 12,000 years, we get closer and closer. Planet gets more and more subtle in its understanding, and then we begin to fall away. We begin to forget, like this. The pyramids were built here on a going down cycle. So it came from a higher age, and they knew how to build them. I grew up in a Jewish family, and I remember watching Cecil B. DeMille's movie of the Ten Commandments, or whatever. It was probably the 10, yes, because it was Moses and the Jews being freed from being slaves in Egypt. So I know that the pyramids were built by hundreds and hundreds of Jews with dragging rocks up and down the pyramid. Of course, that's ridiculous, because it just simply couldn't be done by that. They had to use much more subtle form. Swami Kriyananda, among others, has said they know how to use sound waves to move physical objects. And first you might think, well, that's odd. But if you have kidney stones, you'll go in and have an ultrasound treatment, won't you? Do you have any idea of how those little sound waves are penetrating and shattering your kidney stone? 100 years ago, did anybody solve kidney stones by putting you in a warm bath and shooting what the Beatles music at it? You don't know what are they shooting? Every pregnant mother goes and has a quote ultrasound, takes a picture of the baby in utero, and we just think, oh, that's normal. 100 years ago, nobody knew any of that. But it wasn't created in the last 150 years. It was noticed. It was observed. It was understood, because on this planet, we're moving into a more and more subtle age. And I'm standing right here. How was your trip over? Oh, it was fine. We just got on the plane and then we got off. 100 years ago, could you have gotten here in 8 hours, 8.5 hours, and been served a hot meal in the middle of it? You see how it is? Because we're moving away from a fixed, the first age, which we've just come out of, is the age of matter, in which everything is solid. And if it's a if it's a piece of wood, it's a piece of wood. That's just simply what it is. If it's a horse, it's a horse, whatever it might be. If I'm a Jewish person and you're a Christian person, we are obviously separate. There's just no question about that. Now we're moving out, we've moved out of the age of matter and we've entered the age of energy. The transition started in 1700 and the age of energy really began in 1900. And if you want to study it, you can see from 1900 until now, everything has changed. And it's all based on more and more subtle forms of energy, isn't it? Look at this microphone, not even a wire. How? Why? The electric lights, you know, the iPad that Dunbar uses when he sings, and the nifty little pedal where he can step on it like that, and the page will turn. All of this, but none of it was created. It was merely observed and understood. That's what happened with Einstein. So that's where we are. So the energy itself is accelerating like this. But what's happening is that the energy is moving faster than our ability to adjust harmoniously to it. So you see lots and lots of shifts happening, and you see a tremendous amount in the social fabric of the country, isn't it? Because now that we're thinking in terms of energy, we're not so interested in form. So whereas, for example, let's say marriage used to have an obvious, recognizable form, and it was lifelong. That was simply it. And it really didn't matter if you were happy. All that mattered is that you looked right. And it was just unthinkable that you not look right. And looking right, depending on your culture, meant that you were white or brown or black, but you had to look right because the form of it was really the key. And I was talking about the government of the country that I live in. The form has been very important to us. And it's really shocking. I mean, I'm not naive. I've been through enough in my life already to have gotten the point. But still, I'm surprised. And I'm a citizen of the world. I travel a great deal. I only speak this language, but still, I'm shocked that the form of the country that I've been part of is changing. And I don't know what to do about it. And what's also happening simultaneously, some of us are catching this wave and having a really good time. Others are quite determined that there's been some really cosmic error here and it has to be fixed. And that the rigidity of the past, the separation of the past, the clear identity, everybody in their place and staying there, that's the way things ought to be. And that they're going to make sure that they stay that way. And they either get people like them or they get people who are just freaked out by what's happening and just want to go back to that security, because this isn't a stunningly insecure time that we're all living in. We just don't know from day to day in the simplest ways, you know, who your children are going to turn out to be. You so lovingly give birth to these children and raise them, and they turn out odd, you know, just just not, you know, not as they're supposed to be. Friends, yes, you all know this. You're either the odd one, you know. I was the odd one. I never had children to become odd to me, but I just was odd to my parents. They were nice parents. They coped. Friends of mine, their son, he was about 14 or 15, and he was really beginning to rebel and become exceedingly difficult. And his parents went to Swami Kriyananda for just counseling what to do with this boy. And Swami said to them, well, he said, you know, sometimes parents just have to accept that you got a lemon. Is that an expression here? That means one that's really sour and doesn't work. You got a lemon, you got a lemon. And they just went, oh. And he sort of let them have that for just, you know, a few seconds. And then he said, but I don't think so. But that's what we're working with. You can't depend on it at all. You build up a 5-generational business. When I was in India once, one of my trips there, but I heard someone saying that my taxi driver, he had 5 generations of storytellers. in his background, and now he was driving a taxi in Delhi. I mean, just imagine all the dissonance that creates. But that's what we're living in. But then there are those who are just trying to hold it. They, as my friend put it, they want the future to look like the past. And here's the really confusing part. Because the ones who want it to look like the past, even though I'm telling you all this time, we're going into a new age. I mean, the solar system is moving closer to the center of the galaxy, and no president or prime minister is going to be able to stop it. It's just going to happen. And the closer that we get to that, the more enlightened this age is going to become. But the ones who are trying to stop it are the ones who apparently hold the power right now. The politicians, they have armies, they have national budgets, they have nuclear weapons, and all of that intensity. Now, because the problem is, even though we're going into a more enlightened age, first of all, it's not that enlightened. It's just more enlightened. There's 4 ages, and this is only number 2. The fourth age is the time when it's really pleasant to be here. As when Swami Kriyananda put it to me once, I said to him, "Sir, the next time that you decide to reincarnate, could we please come to a higher age than this one? Because this is really tiresome." And he said, "Oh, it's always the material plane. It's never fully satisfying." But then he spoke of the 4th age, which is Satya, which is the age of consciousness. He said, "That one's better because people like us are in charge." Is how he put it. We have the national budgets, and we don't have military. We don't have nuclear weapons, or we don't have weapons. We think differently. But up until then, it's not heaven on earth. It's just more subtle. Life is easier. More subtle things happen. But the fact that there's so much power for the past, or what I was going to say, transitions like this are very turbulent. The Mahabharata, the great epic of India with Krishna and Arjuna, when everybody got wiped out, that was the same transition point actually going down. They were going from the age of energy into the age of matter, but it was the same point of transition. And now we're going from the age of matter into the age of energy. And a lot of things have to be destroyed right now. A lot of forms have to be broken. Now, here's another part of the story which is vitally important, and this is, we sense this, but we have to be more expansive about it. We're all equal in the eyes of God. And a mother can have 5 children, and she puts so much attention on the really naughty one, because the really naughty one needs a lot of attention. And so Mother has a lot of, I think of Divine Mother. That's the way I think about God, because I prefer to be comforted by a mother than judged by a father. This is not because I'm female. This is because male and female are the balancing points. I like to be comforted. That's what Divine Mother means to me. That divine love accepts me as I am. And my Heavenly Father loves me too. And most of the time I'm ready to meet the standard and stand up and be who I'm supposed to be. But the other times I like to be comforted. So Divine Mother loves all of us equally, and the drama is individual self-realization. Each one of us is equally capable of becoming a God-realized master, and inevitably will. Just depends how long it takes us. And each of us is also given the necessary free will to try out all our theories about who we're supposed to be and what's going to make us happy. If you look at your own life, if you just analyze every big and little decision that you make, it's always based on what will bring me the greatest happiness and what will ease the suffering. This morning, I looked at that bag of salted caramel truffles, which the landlady at our Airbnb so lovingly left on the table. I had one last night, should I have one before breakfast this morning? Should I slip 2 into my purse? Every decision is based on what we think is going to make us happy, what will cause suffering. So I have to think of the effect of chocolate and sugar on me, and I have to think whether the suffering of that is going to be greater than the happiness of having it. No matter how trivial the decision, that is always what we're motivated by. And part of the divine drama, the metaphysics of this whole thing is we don't learn from being told. You know, the premise of institutional religion is that somebody with authority will tell you, if you do this, you will go to heaven. If you do that, you will go to hell, which is a pretty darn compelling argument if you're going to believe that. That's how institutional religions work. They explain to you what you have to do, and then you do it like that. We're in an age now, but we don't really learn from that. In fact, when you have an either or like that, your next question is, how bad can I be? What is the cutoff point? You know, before I still can go to heaven. And then, of course, once the institutional religion starts telling you stuff like that, they have to answer every single one of those questions, because we don't really learn from being told, we learn from our own experience. And so, because our Divine Mother, and I will add our Heavenly Father here, you know, I'm not talking about anthropomorphic images of God. What I'm really saying is that when you give it something that you already understand, it becomes a doorway for you to expand even beyond that. So compassion, wisdom, that's what's being represented here. And actually, my great love in life is wisdom. So the truth is, I'm as devoted to the Father as I am to the Mother. But what we need in our world right now is the Divine Mother. But a good mother, think in a human way, a good mother doesn't overprotect her child. A good mother knows that you need to learn your lessons. So she lets you learn your lessons. She makes sure that she knows that that she loves you, and that no matter what happens, she'll take you back again. But she makes sure that you have your chance to learn your lessons. And any parent, mother or father, who overprotects their child does not really help them, because the child then remains weak and never really understands how to face life. Divine Mother is just the same. So she has a lot of children who believe that having nuclear codes and military power and great admiration in this world and everybody jumping to their call and looking at them with admiration like this will make them happy. And so this is a very good time for a lot of Divine Mother's naughty children to have free rein. And that's really what's going on right now, is that a lot of people with a lot to learn about power and the consequences and compassion or the lack of it, they have a lot to learn, because that's what's needed to get us through this cycle to the other side. This is what the masters tell us. And on the other side of it, they said there's several centuries of unprecedented peace and prosperity. It's not that it'll be over. And you know, it really doesn't matter, because we have one lifespan here and we won't come back unless it's good for us. We'll be where we're meant to be. Now, the other side of it is us, which is we have to have people who are going to plant the apple seed so that the new orchard can spring up. We have to have people who understand how to do that. And coming all the way back to where I started here, when I was talking about the Instagram and what I was thinking, because since we've been in the UK, since I walked into this room, I've had several conversations with people who said, "Oh, there you are, you have feet. I didn't know that you had feet." You know? But we're already friends. But I started thinking about that on a much more subtle level, you know, which is thought is really the greatest power. And let me also just say that for a minute. We think that this world is the strongest part of it, but consider for a moment how things happen. We're in this very interesting building, which is dedicated to a particular cause and has a particular architecture. None of this popped into existence by itself. Every single thing that was either invented or bought or placed or designed, somebody had to think about it first. Even to make this place, someone had to think about it. The idea had to come into their mind. Yogananda says ideas are not individual. They're actually, we vibrate at a certain level of awareness. And when we vibrate on that level, we begin to have perceptions that match that level. We're receiving these ideas. Anyone who is creative at all knows you just suddenly know something. Oh, I know what we could do. You say it like that. We have an idea. And then whether or not that the idea goes any farther depends on our capacity and our willingness to put energy into that idea. So someone thinks of this building before it was even constructed. They get an architect to make the drawings. They pay the architect. Then they sell the idea to someone else. Then they find the land. Then they get the contractors. You can see how many levels happen, all of which take time. But this is true even for ideas in the sense of capturing people's imagination, creating a civilization, creating a shared culture. You start with the idea. Yogananda had a lot of God-inspired ideas. He came to America in 1946. He published this book. I'm going to tell the story of my life, and I'm also going to give a lot of interesting philosophy in that book. I'm going to talk about the similarity of the original teachings of Jesus and the original teachings of Krishna, which have nothing to do with either Hinduism or Catholicism. I thought that I was a Hindu because I was following an Indian path until I went to India for the first time, which was 1986, quite a while ago. And then I suddenly discovered that I wasn't a Hindu at all. I thought to myself, I'm about as Hindu as I am Catholic, which was really neither, none of them. But I follow the Bhagavad Gita, and I understand that the New Testament, once you get through the symbology of it, it's just the same as the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna and Jesus, but Yogananda had the idea. Then he had the idea to share these teachings, and he crisscrossed the United States and spoke to thousands of people. And then the power of the idea begins to be shared, and then people's lives begin to change. Maybe I should be a vegetarian. Maybe I should learn Kriya Yoga. Maybe I should do Hatha Yoga. Maybe I should drink less alcohol or perhaps no alcohol. Just all the different things, those ideas too. The idea, then energy is applied to the idea, and then gradually it manifests. So when we look at the world that we're living in now and the power that the people of the past are trying to apply to the future, this is over. Because that idea is just past. This idea of separation, this idea that every country has to be more powerful than the other one. You know, just all of those things which people have just held, that's what they really needed to do. Oh, I want a piece of your country. I'm going to go get it. Really? I mean, it's just madness. And in order to do it, I'm going to kill hundreds of thousands of my people and hundreds of thousands of your people. And then you hate me, and then you come back and you go after me. This is simply nuts. There's no other word for it. It's absolutely nuts. But it's been an idea that has been, and a lot of energy has been put into it. And so now it's going to run its course. And all these people who think that's a good idea, Divine Mother is letting them run around on this planet right now. And you and I are here for two reasons. Because we get that this is over, and we can see where we're going, and we have that idea, and we're putting energy into that idea. And the little apple seed is beginning to sprout and is beginning to come up. And also, and I speak for myself, and I may also speak for you, because all of this scares me. Yeah, it does scare me. Not so much for myself. I prefer not to suffer, but I don't mind dying. I've had a really good life. Doesn't matter to me if my life is taken away. Our lives are taken away. As Swami Kriyananda once was talking to a group of anti-nuclear activists, and they gave this tremendous presentation about what will happen if the nuclear bomb of a certain power drops on the city of Chicago, and how many thousands will be vaporized, and how many will be left as ash, and how many will die of radiation. I mean, it was extremely well done, utterly horrible, and all true. And they were trying to get Swami Kriyananda and Ananda to sort of be active with them. Swami's response was very interesting. He said, first he said, I appreciate your sincerity. You know, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. This is an extremely well done and effective presentation. He said, and then he said, 100 years from now, almost no one who's on the planet now is still going to be here. He said, so whether we dribble out over the next century or all go to the astral world at the same time, he said, it's not going to make a whit of difference. Because once you leave this world is, that's just the end of it. It's just gone. It was an interesting experience, and now you're on to the next one. But then he said, if your goal is peace, fear is not the right tactic. Because even though you have a good objective, the energy that you're putting out, the vibrations that you're creating, create separation, anxiety. Now, fear is the great enemy of all of us. St. John in the Bible said it really simply, perfect love casts out all fear. And the perfect love he was referring to is not, human love is very close to divine love, but he was talking about the love of God, both received and offered. That's where it comes from. And all of karma, all the lessons that we have to learn, if you think about it, fear is always the basis of it. Everything that you react to, everything that you're not able to respond in a balanced way to, is always because of fear. Fear is as Yogananda once defined it, as the memory of past pain and the concern that that pain is going to come again. You see, it all comes down to what brings happiness and what brings suffering. And the reason we're afraid is because we think that we're alone and vulnerable. And almost everybody who behaves in a naughty way behaves because they feel alone and vulnerable, and they're reacting against that. And what is the antidote? Is the realization that we're all children of God, that we are infinitely loved, and that we are part of this cosmic tapestry, and that we are not powerless and alone. We are just not yet aware of our true relationship. And Yogananda says the entire purpose of the turbulent times that we're going to go through is because mankind has become utterly isolated from divine truth, that we no longer understand our oneness with the infinite spirit. And so we're all isolated and afraid. And that's why after this is over, it will be entirely different, at least for a time. And we're that difference. I started out pessimistic about 4 years ago, doing a lot of traveling around the world, and I've been to a lot of places, 50 cities, 23 countries in the last 3 or 4 years. And now I'm very optimistic, because we are a very large family and a very bright family who really understands. And I think when they're done, and I think it's going to get much worse before it gets better. Economic problems, Yogananda spoke of war. War will go nuclear. It hasn't yet gone nuclear, but of course it will. Because frightened people get backed into a corner, you think they're not going to use the power they have. And if we are watching this show from the other side or from this side, it won't really matter. But if you're here and your loved ones are not here anymore, it's going to be very challenging. I'm afraid of that. And so I get to face my fear. So what is the purpose of life? Is the purpose of life to be born in one state of ignorance and to die in the same state of ignorance? You know, our idea of what a good life is one where nothing really hard ever happens. That's what we consider a good life, don't we? But is it really good to never be challenged to grow? And this is the last part of what all of us have to accept, is that we have a job to do. And that job is within ourselves. That job is to hold to the light. Because as our title says, the world really needs our higher self now. It needs we need to be radiating a consciousness. And it's not just enough of, oh, everything's going to be all right. We have to go to what God is trying to teach us now, which is we are united in the Spirit and in attunement to that Spirit. That's where our power is going to come from. And that's what I've seen. And I lovingly think of, after all this is over, those who thought the future was going to be like the past, those of them that are left, are going to be really surprised that how many of us there are, because they don't really know we're here, because we don't look like much, because we just don't look like much. We're not advertised in the papers. We're just quietly becoming vegetarians and doing yoga and planting apple trees and sharing with our neighbors and loving people who don't look like us. Yeah. I mean, and that just doesn't make the headlines. But I'm very optimistic after going all over the world, because the same thought form is growing. And as I was twice now, I've tried to get back to the Instagram, I was just sensing that Instagram and Facebook and all of those things, which are also being used to spread a tremendous amount of negativity, but we're building this core. We're building this family. Because I meet those of you, some of you I've already spoken to, who recognize me, even though I don't recognize you because I haven't seen you yet. And you're not wearing blue. You're not like distinctive in this way. But I also know you really deeply, because we have been attuning to each other over a long period of time. And that's the energy we're putting into it. It's like we're seeing the truth and we're holding it and we're committing ourselves to it. And well, it's the good news. It's the really, 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 really good news. But we have to be serious about our responsibility. And it's not just to go out on the street to protest, which if you feel to, go right ahead. But fear is not a good tactic if peace is your goal, nor is anger. But more than that, we have to be the carriers of a new way of understanding life. And it's not easy, because fear will make us react in the same way that they're reacting. So we have to do what's necessary to overcome that fear. It's a big job, but golly, what a good way to spend a lifetime.